Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next hour, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy in Kyiv. This is the first ever visit by an Indian PM to Ukraine. India celebrates the first National Space Day on the 23rd of August, which is today, to commemorate the moon landing last year. The theme is touching lives while touching the moon. America's Pentagon says military-to-military relations between New Delhi and the US are strong. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is set to meet US Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin. And President of the Central African country, Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, allows the first disbursement of $10 million to fight the country's Mpox outbreak. First up, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Kyiv, a historic visit to Ukraine. Now, the Indian PM arrived in Ukraine's capital Kyiv on a day-long visit to Ukraine. The Prime Minister arrived in Kyiv from Poland on board a Rail Force One train in the second and final leg of his two-nation trip. Prime Minister Modi is the first ever Indian Prime Minister to visit Ukraine since the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two nations. Upon reaching Kyiv, the PM received a warm welcome by the Ukrainian Indian community. He is visiting Ukraine at the invitation of President Volodymyr Zelenskiy. The day also saw Prime Minister Modi paying a floral tribute at the statue of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the Indian nation. Prime Minister Modi and his visit to Ukraine comes nearly 6 weeks after his high-profile trip to Moscow. Prime Minister Modi has always made a strong appeal for peace. You can see a hug for Prime Minister Modi that he gave to President Zelenskiy, and this is a shot where they are paying homage to the braves of Ukraine, it seems. A solemn occasion indeed. Certain audiovisual elements there for the Prime Minister to witness. Now, India's PM has met, as you could see, Ukraine's President Zelenskiy. Both leaders have honored the memory of Ukrainian children at the Martyrologist Exposition in Kyiv. Martyrologist Exposition stands as a testimony to recall those who lost their lives in the conflict. So these are the images that have come in from the Martyrologist Institute, and where Prime Minister Modi has met, as you can see, President Zelenskiy of Ukraine. And this is quite a solemn visit, as you can make out, where there are exhibits, audiovisual and others, of people who've been martyred in the conflict. Prime Minister Modi has been very clear right from the start when this conflict began, and there's a reference to that in this place as well, that there is no solution that emerges from the battlefield, and that the way forward has to emerge from dialogue. He's repeatedly said that India and there are many other countries that are willing to work with all sides to ensure that that sort of a dialogue takes place, which can ultimately lead to a path towards peace. This is the martyrologist exposition in Kyiv, where Prime Minister Modi and President Zelenskiy have met and have been together through this exposition as well. My colleague Jessica Taneja now joins us from the newsroom. Jessica, very solemn pictures indeed here, and I'm sure the message that Prime Minister Modi will ultimately deliver, and we'll get to know about it as well, I'm sure, pretty soon through the course of the day, is what he has often repeated about any sort of a conflict that is at the moment unfolding in the world, be it in Ukraine or in the Middle East or West Asia.
And as we've seen the Prime Minister reiterate the words in various multilateral forums, not just his arrival in Ukraine, but you would remember 6 weeks ago in Russia as well, when the Russian missiles had struck a hospital in Kyiv. That was a devastating moment for Ukraine, and the Prime Minister had said that this kind of violence is no place in society, and solutions cannot be found on the battlefield. And preceding, of course, that the Prime Minister had said earlier, where this is not an era of war. So given the kind of statements that have been given from the Indian side, it is pretty much clear the fact that where it stands on the conflict, it wants to engage, it wants both sides to engage in dialogue and diplomacy, and that is perhaps the only resolution in sight. But of course there are challenges to it, and challenges that haven't been able to, that many of the sides who are trying to mediate a peace process between the two haven't been able to achieve in the last many years. In fact, not just recently, but from the previous Minsk Accord as well, a lot has not been settled when it comes to territorial expansionism in the region.
Yes, Jessica, we have been seeing these images again. This martyrologist exposition really bringing to home all that has been going on since the conflict began, and clearly this is something that has been playing on the minds of a lot of people around the world as well, and this visit all the more important because of that.
Yes, you know, the visit is being watched not closely, not just at home, but also abroad, with India's key allies in the West, looking at how this proceeds further, given the fact that India has put importance in a peace process or a possible negotiation which could bring an end to the conflict, not necessarily as a role of a mediator, but of course as one of the leaders who could play a key role when it comes to you know, helping both sides come to a particular solution, or at least across the table for talks where a potential peace plan can be charted out. But that remains a distant dream, Gautam, given the kind of war theatre we're witnessing in the region, with the Ukrainian forces now claiming more than 1,600 square kilometers of the region in Kursk region, which is in Russia, and with the Russian forces occupying 4 regions in eastern Ukraine. The battle pretty much continues, and the fact that a possible peaceful resolution, as was tried in the Swiss Peace Summit just a few months ago, wasn't so successful, even though it saw the attendance of more than 190 countries and 10 other important international organizations. So of course the world is pressing for peace, but how will it be achieved, and where will India stand in that particular mix would be crucial to watch. We're given to understand that India could play a very key role. If you see through the analysis throughout the day as to what is being talked about when it comes to Prime Minister's role and his visit and what all it could possibly achieve. One of the main indicators is given the Indian Prime Minister's political relationship which has evolved over the years with Russia, and the kind of multipolarity India has shown, and of course emerging as a leader of the global south, there is some trust in that kind of relationship and the potential of what the Prime Minister can offer.
Yes, and as far as gestures go, because Jessica's gestures also speak their own language apart from words, and we've seen Prime Minister Modi when he was in Moscow, and we've seen him now with President Zelensky as well, there with, of course, Vladimir Putin, a hug there and a hug here too, and an arm around the shoulder as well. Apart from the visit to this place, which is a testimony really to all that has been going on in the conflict that has been unfolding in that country for more than well, almost 2 years now.
That's correct, and India would also want to emphasize on the fact that it can do a lot and achieve a lot in terms of helping Ukraine with its post-war construction efforts. Now, if estimates are to be believed, Gautam, at this point, in the next few decades, Ukraine would require more than $750 billion, and that is just a recent estimate without inflation adjusted. So, of course, that could be potentially a lot more, and where India could come in and how Indian companies could perhaps help energize the Ukrainian economy again and benefit mutually. The trade between the two, pre-COVID times stood at more than $3 billion. Of course, it reduced massively post-COVID, but that again perhaps has led to the point where the collaboration can be increased and looking at potential sectors where both can mutually benefit. Remember, India was, importing sunflower oil, and how the Black Sea, with the theatre of war at this point, has disrupted various supply chains. So a peaceful resolution to this conflict perhaps would be in the best interest of not just Europe and the West collectively, but also for Asia and the general security architecture of the region.
Yes, and there's the fate of a lot of Indian students who studied in Ukraine as well. In balance, there's an Indian community there too that already has greeted Prime Minister Modi when he reached Kyiv. Their fate too hangs in balance as far as seeking a resolution to this conflict is concerned, and those must also be on Prime Minister Modi's mind when he is in Kyiv.
That's correct. Before the conflict escalated in the region, there were more than 19,000 students, medical students in Ukraine, who you'd recall had to be evacuated, and India had conducted an operation called Operation Ganga back then to bring back the Indian students safely through Poland, and India, particularly with its strengthened ties with Poland, was able to achieve that in that particular very, very critical moment where there were missiles barraging all over. So of course that particular point did prove to the effect that India's balanced ties has been able to offer it the kind of necessary help at a time when it required it the most. But beyond that, there is a lot of exploration in terms of how this particular program of students as well traveling to Ukraine can be sort of revived, because as you know, the students who returned to India had to leave their studies midway and were finding it difficult to sort of align with the current curriculum timelines back home. So a lot of those students did suffer as well, and it would be in interest of those who now go back. And remember, India has sent its skilled workforce, particularly medical students who are serving as doctors in Ukraine. So that particular cooperation and that mutual cooperation further should be enhanced.
Well, certainly, Jessica, and we await to hear more about what is happening in Kyiv between India and Ukraine when its two top leaders are meeting there. And we'll, of course, take updates from you later on as well in the day. Thanks for joining us for the time being. Now, India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, who is on a 4-day visit to Washington, D.C., had a lively interaction with the Indian community there. Interacting with the Indian diaspora, Rajnath Singh expressed joy to see how the Indian community continues to cherish and uphold their cultural values and maintain their connection to their roots. During the minister's visit to Washington, D.C., India and the U.S. signed the Security of Supplies Arrangement Document and Memorandum of Agreement regarding the assignment of liaison officers. The Memorandum of Agreement regarding the assignment of liaison officers was signed by Vishwesh Negi, Joint Secretary International Cooperation, India's Ministry of Defence, and Dr. Eli Ratner, Assistant Secretary of State for Defence for Indo-Pacific Security Affairs. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Congo steps up surveillance and testing as Mpox cases rise. Around 600 cholera infections in war-torn Sudan since July.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, India is commemorating its first ever National Space Day on the 23rd of August, which is today, marking a historic achievement with the successful landing of ISRO's Vikram lander from Chandrayaan-3 on the 23rd of August last year on the south pole of the moon.
2, 1, 0.
August 23rd, 2023, a day that etched India's name in the annals of space history. On this momentous day, India became the fourth nation to successfully land on the moon and the first to explore its mysterious southern polar region. To honor this remarkable achievement, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi declared August 23rd as National Space Day. President Draupadi Murmu attended the celebrations of National Space Day in New Delhi, with a focus theme, Touching Lives While Touching the Moon, India's Space Saga.
स्पेस एक्सप्लोरेशन ने मनुष्य की क्षमता को बढ़ाया है, मानव की कल्पना को यथार्थ में बदला है, ब्रह्मांड के रहस्यों से पर्दा उठाया है। स्पेस एक्सप्लोरेशन रोमांचकारी होने के साथ-साथ एक चुनौती भरा कार्य भी है। इसमें अनेक समस्याएं आती हैं। इन समस्याओं के समाधान के लिए किए जाने वाले अनुसंधान विज्ञान के विकास को गति देती है और मानव जीवन को बेहतर बनाती है।
President Murmu hailed the achievements of ISRO and initiatives launched by government for startups in the space sector. She also congratulated ISRO for its upcoming Gaganyaan mission.
इसरो भारत का अंतरिक्ष स्टेशन स्थापित करने की दिशा में आगे बढ़ रहा है। मैं गगनयान मिशन की भी उत्सुकता से प्रतीक्षा कर रही हूं, जिसमें भारतीय अंतरिक्ष टीम को अंतरिक्ष में ले जाया जाएगा। मुझे विश्वास है कि इन सभी मिशन के फलस्वरूप ऐसे परिणाम सामने आएंगे जिनसे देश सामाजिक, आर्थिक एवं वैज्ञानिक रूप से लाभान्वित होंगे।
The success of Chandrayaan-3 has propelled India onto the global stage as a key player in space exploration. Union Minister Jitendra Singh said that India's space sector has put India at the front in the private sector.
And the world never expected that we would be able to achieve this feat, because our journey in space was just about 55 years long. ISRO was born in the year 1969, the year which is remembered for the first human being having landed on the surface of moon. Within 50 years, just about half a century, we became the first to have landed on the south pole of moon before anybody else could do.
With fresh investments and growing collaborations with private partners, India's space sector has taken a quantum leap, paving the way for future discoveries and innovations. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
And on the occasion, ISRO scientists shared their experiences of interacting with Prime Minister Modi during the Chandrayaan-2 and Chandrayaan-3 missions. Dr. B. N. Ramakrishna highlighted Prime Minister's excitement while celebrating the mission's success.
Our Honorable Prime Minister waved the flag and continuously he clapped, and the entire control center was a big area of joy, I can say. Everyone was clapping and shouting. It was a very nice thing. He told that India has achieved this feat not only for India, to the entire human community. He said this achievement is not just for our nation, it is for the entire world.
While sharing the joy of the accomplishment, Dr. Pavitra Shinde described how the Prime Minister highlighted women's contributions in space and encouraged scientists to inspire the youth.
So it was a moment of joy, you know, it was some kind of a special joy, I can say, and that I could relate with the PM. He also experienced the same, and he told it's something which is very rare. And then he congratulated the entire scientific community, ISRO community, and then he applauded our efforts. He wants to highlight the contribution of the women in this particular field, the space field. His encouragement, especially for the younger generation, especially schools and colleges, he urged us, like especially the ISRO scientists, to inspire them, to guide them, share our experience.
And on the occasion of National Space Day, DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya has spoken with the Vice President of Ananta Technology, Soma Sagar, as well. Listen into this conversation.
I have with me Mr. Soma Sagar, sir. He's the Vice President of Ananta Technologies. Sir, you guys have come here working on different aspect of, satellite, rockets, as well as other things. So tell us more about how the space sector is growing.
We are one of the first generation company into launch vehicles, satellites and application side as well. So for the last 32 years, we have closely associated with ISRO in building their subsystem systems, and we also have facilities in Hyderabad, Bangalore and Trivandrum. Now, thanks to the reforms, as you mentioned, because of which we are now eagerly working with different global partners as well, because there is some local value addition need to be done in India. So many foreign companies, they are approaching us for having some tie-ups or joint ventures. Otherwise, they cannot sell their product in India.
A company is coming out together into making sure that the India space sector, which is a booming space sector, gets a head-on in the years to come. With Campus and Rahul Chopra, this is Tapas Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
As a new and a more deadlier strain of Mpox virus spreads internationally, Singapore has begun screening incoming passengers at airports for Mpox symptoms. Temperature and visual screening is being carried out at Changi and Seletar airports from Friday onwards as a precautionary measure against Mpox after one confirmed case of a potentially more serious variant each was reported in Sweden and Thailand. Meanwhile, President of the Central African country Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, has also allowed a first disbursement of $10 million to fight the country's Mpox outbreak. And in India, as Mpox has been detected in neighbouring Pakistan as well, health authorities have also taken measures to ensure they are ready to deal with the situation if any cases surface within the country.
There is nothing to panic because so far India has not reported a case, and the assessment by the JMG group and which is conducted by NCDC is that the risk of large spread in India is unlikely as of now. We will take the thing forward on a case-to-case basis. If we start having cases, we have alerted our points of entry for certain individuals who might report these cases, and then they may be referred to designated hospitals. We've discussed with states also. We've asked them to establish designated institutions for isolation and management of such cases as and when required.
And health workers in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has been the epicenter of the latest outbreak, have stepped up surveillance and testing of suspected Mpox cases as the number of people getting infected continues to rise in this Central African country. Authorities have recorded 18,000 cases of the viral disease so far and over 500 deaths since the beginning of this year. DD India's Chris Okamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The Mpox outbreak is raging in the Democratic Republic of Congo. More than 1,000 new infections have been recorded across the country over the past week. A new strain of the virus discovered in the country's east earlier this year has been blamed for the rapid spread. The DRC Health Ministry says it's stepping up public awareness campaigns as well as the prevention and treatment of patients. At least 13 African countries have recorded Mpox cases so far. Some of the cases have been linked to the contagious strain circulating in the DRC. That recently led the World Health Organization to declare the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. The US and Japan have promised to send vaccines to the DRC to help end the outbreak. The vaccines are expected next week. The UK government has also offered $3.1 million to tackle the disease. Mpox is an infectious disease caused by the monkeypox virus. The disease has been reported in conflict areas in eastern DRC, making it difficult for health workers to reach patients. Chris Ochamringa in Kinshasa, reporting for DD India.
After a 6-month closure, the first aid trucks prepared by the United Nations World Food Programme crossed the border to deliver much-needed aid to war-ravaged West Darfur. The United Nations agency on Wednesday said that more than a dozen trucks delivered food assistance for about 13,000 people threatened with famine in Western Darfur's Kyiv region. The agency added that it had food ready to move for 500,000 people. Global monitors say that more than 6 million people face food insecurity across the Darfur, which is mostly controlled by the Rapid Support Forces. The army-aligned government blocked aid deliveries in February, though the Adre crossing into territory controlled by the RSF, alleging that it was being used for weapons deliveries. At least 14 people have been killed after a bus plunged into a river in Nepal's Tanahun district. 16 people have been rescued as search operations are underway to retrieve others. Nepal Army personnel received help through locals at the site to save the survivors. Ladders and ropes were used to pull out the injured from the river. The bus carrying 40 passengers was registered in India and was headed to Nepal's capital, Kathmandu. Let's now get to some other stories from around the world as well. Well, Union Minister for Youth Affairs and Sports Dr. Mansukh Mandaviya met Indian athletes who took part in the World Boccia Challenger 2024 in Cairo in Egypt last month. The minister said that he is proud of the athletes who shone at the World Boccia Challenger. Providing relief to Tripura flood hit, the central government has approved the release of 40 crore rupees in advance for the affected people. The 11 NDRF teams, 3 columns of the army and 4 helicopters of the Air Force have been deployed by the centre, and they are already assisting the state government on the ground. Seasonal monsoon rains have lashed major parts of the state where National Disaster Response Force personnel have been deployed. Nagaland has begun with its second Jhoom Fair 2024. The fair is being held at Chichama village under Kohima district on Friday. Organized by the Chichamia Feri Micho Kroto, the fair will witness exhibition cum sale featuring Chichama cuisine, exhibition of local Jhoom products, agricultural tools and equipment. India's Union Health Minister J.P. Nadda launched National Medical Register under the National Medical Commission. Highlighting Prime Minister Modi's vision for health systems, the minister said this is a great step towards improving health services across India.
We have come out with the registration portal, online portal of the National Medical Register. The using of the QR code to see to it that the authentication of the National Medical Register is there. And Prime Minister Modi's vision is very clear that we have to make this country digitally a sound ecosystem should be developed. And sound ecosystem will be only possible if health being a major area.
And still to come on DD India News Hour, the US envoy tells the United Nations that the Gaza ceasefire deal is now in sight. And Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te visits Frontline Island between Taiwan and China. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy, and before we go any further, another look at our top stories. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy in Kyiv. This is the first ever visit by an Indian PM to Ukraine. India celebrates the first National Space Day on the 23rd of August, which is today, to commemorate the moon landing last year. The theme is touching lives while touching the moon. And the Pentagon says military-to-military relationships between New Delhi and the United States are strong. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is set to meet his US counterpart, Lloyd Austin. Ukraine has said that it used a US-made GBU-39 bomb to strike a Russian platoon command post in the Kursk region of Russia. Ukraine's Air Force released a footage on Thursday. Kyiv's allies, including the United States, are supplying weapons to Ukrainian forces but have imposed restrictions on how and when they can be used inside Russia. Out of concern, such strikes could prompt retaliation from Russia that draw other NATO countries into the Ukrainian war. The International Atomic Energy Agency's Director General Rafael Grossi will be visiting Kursk nuclear power plant next week to assess the situation there. The IAEA was informed by the Russian Federation that the remains of a drone had been found within the Kursk nuclear power plant. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday accused Ukraine of trying to strike the Kursk nuclear power plant in an overnight attack. Acting Kursk Governor Alexei Smirnov told Putin the situation at the Kursk plant was stable. And DD India's Dasu Chernashova has more on this from Moscow.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said Ukrainian forces tried to attack the Kursk nuclear power plant on Thursday. He said that Moscow had informed the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA about the incident. He said that he expected watchdog specialists to come and assess the situation. Acting Kursk Governor Alexei Smirnov told Putin that the plant remains stable. IAEA head Rafael Grossi is expected to visit the plant next week. He earlier called for maximum restraint to avoid a nuclear accident at the Kursk nuclear power plant. Speaking at a meeting of senior officials about the situation in Russia and border regions, Smirnov told Putin that over 133,000 people had left the border regions. Bryansk region Governor Alexander Bogomaz said that the border forces had repelled a Ukrainian attempt to cross into Russia. And in the Belgrade region, the governor said that over 30 settlements had been closed and residents relocated. On Thursday evening, Ukraine hit a ferry with fuel tanks in the port of Kavkaz in southern Krasnodar region of Russia. The ferry, loaded with 30 fuel tanks, sank. Dasu Chernashova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
And the latest now about the Israel-Hamas conflict. Hostage and ceasefire talks are expected to pick up again over the coming days in Cairo, as mediators look for a way to bridge gaps between Israel and Hamas after more than 10 months of fighting in Gaza. This comes as hostilities between Israel and the Hezbollah are escalating amid fears of a wider regional spillover. DD India's Sarah Coates has more for us from Tel Aviv.
Well, the pressure on both Israel and Hamas to come to an agreement, come to a ceasefire deal just continues to mount, although while there is a lot of hope for this happening, there certainly is not a lot of optimism here on the ground. Now, late on Wednesday, US President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, they had a phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, really pressing him on the urgency for a truce in Gaza. Now, shortly after this, his office put out a statement. It says that Israel will insist on the achievement of all its objectives of the war as they've been defined by the Security Cabinet, including that Gaza will never again constitute a security threat to Israel. Now, really, the major sticking point this time around is the control over the Philadelphia corridor. This is this very narrow strip of land that separates Egypt and Gaza. And it is a demand of Israel and the Prime Minister that there will be no withdrawal of Israeli forces from this strategic area, with Netanyahu saying that this would be a security threat given that weapon smuggling could happen from Egypt into Gaza. Now, Hamas has also demanded that Israeli forces must withdraw from that area. So certainly a lot of work to do for these key mediators over the weekend as they really try and get across the line and get this truce into play, with this truce really being seen as vital to bring down tensions in other parts of the region, including between Israel and Hezbollah, with cross-border strikes only intensifying. And we also do need to remember that this threat of retaliation from both Hezbollah and also Iran continues to loom over Israel after the assassination of two very senior figures, one of these being Fuad Shakur. He was the second in charge of Hezbollah. He was assassinated in Beirut a number of weeks ago, and just the day after that assassination was another, and this was of Ismail Haniyeh. He was the leader of Hamas's Politburo. So certainly a lot of tension in the region, and once again a lot of pressure on both of these warring parties to finally get this truce done after 10 months of fighting in not only Gaza but also heavy conflict in Israel's north. Reporting from Tel Aviv, I'm Sarah Coates for DD India.
The 2024 Democratic National Convention wrapped up with Kamala Harris formally accepting Democratic Party's nomination for the 2024 presidency as a grand finale. Kamala Harris made her case to the country that she is the right person to be the next president of the United States. It was Kamala Harris's most important speech of her life. Her path from prosecutor to politician has been defined by many firsts. She was America's first Indian-American senator and California's first female and South Asian Attorney General.
And so, on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Now, Harris emerged as the presumptive Democratic candidate little more than a month ago when allies of President Joe Biden forced him to quit the race if successful. Kamala Harris stands to make history as the first woman elected U.S. president. DD India's Caroline Malone reports from Washington, D.C.
She said she would enshrine that into law if Congress allowed her to when she becomes president, in her words. She also spoke about border policy, how she said she would pass a bipartisan border policy. That's something that was considered by Congress, but ultimately voted down in the last few months. She said she would move to protect that. She said it's possible to be a country that both respects immigrants, but also is able to fix what is wrong with the border system right now. And that's quite an important balance to strike to really appeal to voters. We know it's something that many Republicans have been complaining about, that they don't think the Biden-Harris administration has done enough to protect and secure the borders. She also spoke about using tax breaks to help the middle class, really uplifting, she said, more than 1 million Americans, protecting social security and also healthcare. So really a plethora of different things she spoke about, as well as gun violence and the need to do more on that. That's something that's really resonated across this convention.
That's how the entire DNC really rolled out on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Harris said that she will continue to stand strong with Ukraine and vowed to be a president for all Americans.
Our nation with this election has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past a chance to chart a new way forward. Not as members of any one party or faction, but as Americans. And let me say, I know there are people of various political views watching tonight, and I want you to know, I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self, to hold sacred America's fundamental principles, from the rule of law to free and fair elections to the peaceful transfer of power.
And former US President Donald Trump, Kamala Harris's Republican rival, posted live reactions to Vice President Harris's Democratic nomination acceptance speech on his Truth Social platform. Trump also posted a tweet on the social media platform X saying Harris stands for incompetence and weakness, adding that the US is being laughed at all over the world. Trump labeled Harris as a radical Marxist. On the border issue, he said, and I quote, "She could not close the border." He further quipped she has 4.5 months left in office, predicting his win in the November elections. And the election war game in the US is rolling on. Again, Donald Trump has visited US-Mexico border in Arizona on Thursday, where he showered praise on the wall that was built during his administration, but was never completely finished. An Arizona man is wanted after threatening over social media to kill Donald Trump. The Cochise County has said that his visit to the US border with Mexico is part of his campaign.
And we have a Marxist that's running, and I don't think you can let her. This country is not ready for a Marxist president. She will never build the wall. She doesn't want to build the wall. She's only saying if she changes her mind, it's only because she wants to get elected, because who wouldn't want to have a strong border? You need strong borders and strong elections, and we have neither. But we're going to have very strong borders, and we're going to have very strong elections soon. We had a border czar who was the border czar. She loved the title, but she didn't want to do the work because she's lazy. And probably more importantly than being lazy, she wants to have an open border.
Now, Taiwan President Lai Ching-te has visited a frontline island between Taiwan and China to mark a key battle with Chinese forces on Friday. On his first trip to Kinmen since assuming office in May, Lai laid a wreath and bowed his head in respect at a memorial park for the 66th anniversary of a clash with Chinese forces. While addressing veterans at a lunch, Lai said Taiwan wants to continue its free way of life and rejects being ruled by China's Communist Party.
Our aim is that we hope for a peaceful development across the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan's a country that ardently loves peace. Taiwan's people are kind. We are no longer trying to retake the mainland, but we are also unwilling to be ruled by the Communist Party. We want to continue a life of democracy, freedom, human rights, and the rule of law.
Let's now get to some more stories from around the world. Thai rescuers searched through mud at the site of a plane crash that is said to have killed all 9 people on board in Chachoengsao on Thursday. The chartered plane carrying 5 tourists from China and 4 Thais went down east of the Thai capital, Bangkok. The aircraft lost contact with ground control in Bangkok 11 minutes after takeoff. South Korea's Safety Minister Lee Sang-min visited the scene of a hotel fire on Friday that killed 7 people and injured 12 others. The fire began on the 8th floor of the 9-story hotel in Bucheon on Thursday. Lee vowed a thorough investigation and pledged to prevent such tragic incidents from occurring again. A volcano in southwestern Iceland erupted for the 2nd day on Friday, spraying red-hot lava and smoke in its 6th outbreak since December. The eruption took place on the Sundunukur crater row east of Mountain Siddingfell. Live streams from the volcano on the Reykjanes Peninsula showed glowing hot lava shooting up from the ground. And still to come on DD India News Hour. India has won 4 gold medals in women's freestyle under 17 World Wrestling Championships. And star Indian javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra has secured a second spot at the Lausanne Diamond League 2024.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, North Korea's foreign minister has denounced a US planned sale of Apache helicopters to South Korea, vowing to take additional steps to bolster its self-defense. In a press statement issued on Thursday, North Korea's foreign ministry accused Washington, D.C. of escalating military confrontation, disturbing the military balance and thus increasing the danger of a new conflict in the region by supplying lethal weapons to its allies and friends. Pyongyang's strategic deterrence will be further strengthened to protect the national security and interests and regional peace, said the statement, pledging to steadily conduct military activities to boost self-defense. A member of the Economic Advisory Council of Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, Shamika Ravi, has said that the last 10 years have been economically remarkable for the poorest 20% of the Indian population. In a post on social media, Shamika Ravi shared state-wise data along with her tweet and said that in FY12, 6% among the poorest 20% of India's population owned a vehicle, and this has increased to 40% by FY23. The data showed vehicle ownership among the bottom 20% of the Indian households rising. Most in Punjab. Among the state's poorest rural households, it increased from 15.5% to 62.5%. Among Punjab's poorest urban households, the number has risen from 14% to 65.7%. And time now to get you some sporting updates as well. Now, star Indian javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra secured a second spot as he registered a season-best throw of 89.49 meters at the Lausanne Diamond League 2024 on Thursday night. This was Chopra's first competitive appearance since he bagged silver for India at the Paris Olympic Games. The 26-year-old was edged out by Grenada's Anderson Peters, who claimed the top spot in Switzerland with a mammoth throw of 90.81 meters. Meanwhile, Julian Weber of Germany came in third on the day with a best throw of 87.08 meters. The top 6 javelin throwers in the season's standings qualify for the final in Belgium, slated to be held on the 14th of September. Norwegian middle distance runner Jakob Ingebrigtsen won the 1500-meter race at the Lausanne Diamond League, avenging his Olympic defeat from American Cole Hawker. Ingebrigtsen clocked a meet record of 3 minutes 27.83 seconds for the win, with Hawker second and Kessler rounding out the podium. The Norwegian had been an odds-on favourite for Olympic gold in Paris but misjudged his early pace, burning himself out to allow Hawker in for gold. Ingebrigtsen eventually finished fourth in Paris as Britain's Josh Kerr and Yared Nuguse of the US also passed him in the closing meters. India's table tennis player Archana Kamath, who represented India at the Paris Olympics, has decided to step away from the sport. Archana has opted to pursue higher education abroad instead of continuing with her table tennis career. The 24-year-old Archana was part of the Indian women's table tennis team that reached the quarterfinals for the first time at the Olympics. However, India's campaign came to an end after suffering a 3-1 loss to Germany. Archana secured the only win over world number 38 Shan Shiona in the last 8 for India. 4 Indian women wrestlers stamped their class on Thursday as they bagged gold medals in the Under-17 World Wrestling Championships 2024. Aditi Kumari emerged champion in the 43 kg, blanking Maria Luisa Kika of Greece 7-0 in the title clash. In the 57 kg final, Neha overpowered Japan's So Siutsi as she stood out with her double leg attacks. In the 65 kg final, Pulkit faced Daria Frolova, who is competing as a neutral athlete, and won 6-3. Mansi Lada clinched the top podium spot after beating Hannah Priskaya in the 73 kg final. Moreover, India also won 2 bronze medals in Greco-Roman style, with Ronak Dahiya and Sainath Pardi ending on podiums. Now, according to the US Open draw, top seed Jannik Sinner faces a tough road to the New York final, while in-form Aryna Sabalenka will also be tested. Sinner is projected to face 14th seed Tommy Paul in the 4th round, 2021 winner Daniil Medvedev in the quarterfinals, Carlos Alcaraz in the semis, and defending champion Novak Djokovic in the final. Djokovic will begin against a qualifier and is expected to meet Andrei Rublev in the quarterfinals and 4th seed Alexander Zverev in the semis. In the women's draw, top seed Iga Swiatek will start again against a qualifier and faces a potential quarterfinal clash against Canadian Open champion Jessica Pegula. 2nd seed Sabalenka returns well rested after a mid-year break to focus on her health. She will be confident about her chances after winning the tune-up event in Cincinnati. The US Open will be played 26th of August, that is this month, till the 8th of September. Also in tennis, US Open organizers have confirmed that Tunisian player Ons Jabeur has pulled out of the tournament after facing an injury-riddled season. The 29-year-old withdrew from the City Open earlier this month, citing a right shoulder injury, and in June was forced to retire from the Berlin Open in the quarterfinals. She also missed the Olympic Games because of the knee issues. Following Jabeur's withdrawal, Elise Mertens will take over the Tunisian's place in the draw after being installed as a 33rd seed. A qualifier or lucky loser will take the Belgian's place in the draw as well. And noted singer Pink, along with her daughter Willow, performed a version of her hit single What About Us on the final day of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Take a look and enjoy.
We're searchlights we can see in the dark. What about us? What about all the times you said, what about us? But man, you fooled us. Enough is enough. What about us? What about all the plans that ended in disaster? Oh, what about love? What about trust? What about us?
And on that musical note, that's all we have for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can also connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.